Hello and welcome to another edition of AGD Bytesize, and today we're going to continue our look at graphical displays, and we're going to talk about energy bars. And I don't mean the cereal bars that you buy in the supermarket. Of course, I mean the bars which are displayed to show things like energy or fuel and so on. It's a more analog way of displaying data. So as you can see here, I've got the code that we had originally showing the number of lives and being reduced, and here, as you can see, I've got a bar and a number 32, and this bar is going to be the graphical equivalent of that number 32. I've set up a couple of things here for our man to bump into. As you can see here, this is deadly, and it will, when we hit it, knock down the life. And when we want to recover that life, of course, we go back up to here, and as you can see, it fills up there. Now this is just using chunks of blocks rather than pixel perfect accuracy, but for some applications this is enough, and it's quite a short routine and pretty straightforward and simple. In a future video I'll be looking at a more sophisticated version of this bar that is done pixel by pixel. But in the meantime, this will be a good start, a step in the right direction, so to speak. Okay, so let's go and have a look at how some of the graphics are set up. We can start by looking at the new blocks which I have added for this routine. As you can see here, we started with block 6 in the previous video, and now we have a block 7, which is a deadly block, a kind of barbed wire thing. We've got block 8 there, which is for displaying the energy, block 9 for displaying the empty part of the energy, and a little heart here which is a custom block, and that's going to be used for giving the energy back, for restoring the energy. And this is how I've set it up here. Obviously it's entirely up to you how you do it. This is the sprite that I'm using. Same again, use a different sprite if you want. For the purposes of this demo, I haven't added any additional frames. I've just loaded that in and using it as a demo really. So as you can see here, I've got a very basic setup just for testing purposes. It allows me to move the sprite around, and as you can see here, that's exactly what I can do. But if I move it over to the blocks here, then absolutely nothing happens, because right now I haven't coded it yet. So let's start thinking about what we need to do. We're going to need to add another variable. I'm going to use the local variable param_a to store the energy, and it's going to have a value between 0 and 32, and when it changes I will then trigger an update. So the first thing I'm going to do then in this part of the code here in the event code is I'm going to use a second variable t, which is going to be our temporary variable. I'm going to use that to make a comparison to the energy level of the character. So here I'm going to write, if t is equal to param_a, do nothing, otherwise display the value of param_a. Now initially this isn't going to do much, but what I will do eventually is put in between the code let t pma and if t equals pma, I'll put all the action, all the things that can affect param_a, and in this way we'll know that if t is no longer equal to param_a, then we'll know that the value has changed, and it will mean that we should update the information. And this means we're not updating it every single cycle, obviously, which would be heavy on the CPU. This is only going to update when something has changed. So I'll start now here as well in the initialize sprite area. I'm going to set pma here to start out at 32. And if we take a look at that, at the moment, as you can see, I'm moving around, but nothing has happened yet, because obviously the parameter hasn't changed. So let's now put the code in to make that parameter change. We'll detect a deadly block, and we'll tell AGD that it should reduce the energy level by 1 when it hits a deadly block. And we'll also add the custom block, and we will add one to PMA. So here we're changing PMA, and as you can see, oops, I'll just change that because I'm using AGDX with the shorter commands. And as you can see now, when I hit that, you can see that it's updating. And similarly, when I hit that one, it's also updating. There it's going down, and there it's going up. Okay, so that's a good start. What you may have noticed, of course, is that when you initialize the game here, it's not showing anything, and that's because, of course, you haven't changed param. So we're going to have to make a change here so that it will display it from the outset. So rather than setting it at 32 at the start, we'll set it at 0. And this will mean that when the code detects 0, it will know that it's starting a new life. And we can then set a param to be 32 to start. So we'll put the code in here to check for that now. So we'll ask the question, is param 0? And if it is, then set t to 0 and set param to 32. And that will mean that param is now set to maximum energy and t will be 0, so there will be a difference, it will be detected and it will be displayed. And if it's not doing that, it will just do what it did before, which is set t to be the same as param, and that means we can then detect the difference between t and param. That is to say, if anything has changed, if the energy has gone up or down, then it will be detected as a difference between t and param. Now the other thing that I'm doing here is I'm going to add a couple of conditions for the deadly and custom blocks. The first one for the deadly there is if PMA does reach 0, then you should kill the player. And for the custom block, we want to make sure that once it's full, it can't be overfilled, so to speak. So if as long as it's less than 32, then it can be increased up to 32 here. And as you can see, then what happens is that it checks the value of PMA against T. So let's go through one more time. First of all, if PMA is 0, if you're starting a new life, set PMA to 32. If you're deadly, then reduce it by 1. If you're custom, add by 1, and then check for any differences. And if anything has changed, then you need to update the number. So there you can see here we've got the number now. It's displaying as 32 from the start, and when I hit the deadly blocks, it's being reduced, and when I hit the custom blocks, it's being increased, but it's not increasing beyond 32. And as you can see here, the advantage of using this system is that when the life is reduced and the player dies, then param is down to 0, so it will automatically set the energy back to full just after the player has died. So we're saving code by using this method as well, because it will automatically set the param back to 32 because it knows that you're starting a new life, and that's the reason we code it that way. Okay, so now we're going to look at how we can apply this and show it in a graphical way. Now we're going to use a very similar system to what we did with the lives. The only difference, of course, is that we can't show 32 blocks, because obviously that would take up the entire length of the screen. I mean, if you have the space, you can probably just about manage that, but we're going to basically divide it so that it takes up a little bit less room than that. And so what we're going to do is set this second temporary variable opt to be the value of PMA and divide it by 4. So rather than be 0 to 32, it's going to be from 0 to 8. So we'll now set repeat 8. So we've got a value from 0 to 8, same as we did with the lives. And we're going to check if opt is greater than rand, put block 8, put block 9, and add 1 to rand, and end repeat. Now this is exactly the same routine that we did in the previous video, so if you haven't seen that, go back and watch it, and then this part of the code here will be clear to you. We're basically checking, we're doing a repeat, and we're checking to see if the energy is greater than the number on the loop, and as it increases we're going to put either this block or that block there. So let's take a look at what happens now. Here's our bar. As you can see, it showed 8 blocks, and when I hit the deadly block, there it is, it's going down, and when I hit the custom block, it's going up, just like that. Now this is a block by block graphic. It's not pixel accurate, as I said before, but it is a basic start, and probably enough for quite a few games. Certainly things like fuel and stuff like that, when the player just needs to know that they're almost empty. And yeah, so that's basically how that works. It's almost exactly the same type of code that we used, but the difference is, of course, that it's more dynamic. It's actually happening in game. Right, so to finish up, let's review. We've got 3 lives here, and in the restart screen we've got a setup for our lives, which you can see in the previous video. In the initialize sprite routine, we're setting PMA to be 0 so that it knows that it's starting a new life. And here in the main part of the code, we are starting by checking if parame is 0 and setting it at 32. And if we're not at parame 0, if we're not starting a new life, then we're setting t to be the same as parame as a check to know if parame has been changed by any of the actions in the code below. So here if deadly, and here if custom. These are the things that affect the player. Obviously you could include if it hits a sprite or whatever else that you want that can affect the level of the energy, then that's where you put it. Then you check if it's been altered, if it's changed at all, if damage has been done or energy has been recovered. Then we basically use this loop to repeat the same process that we did before with the lives. And as you can see there, one more time, there it is. Let's just see what happens when he dies. Yep, that's fine. And as you can see, when he dies, the energy gets set back. It's actually being set to 0, but of course when it's set to 0, it knows that it's a new life and it sets it back to 32 and reduces the number of lives. And there's the recovery process. Okay, well, I think that's enough for today. We will be looking at a more sophisticated version of this code in a future video, but hopefully this is enough to be going on with for now. Great. Well, as I said, I'll be back soon. In the meantime, keep enjoying AGD, keep enjoying the Spectrum. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. That always encourages me to make more videos, and I will see you soon. Happy coding. Bye bye.